Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's preservation school about restoring the Farley Post Office. Our upcoming events include a virtual Six Celebrate tour of Bushwick on September 30th, a book talk about the history of Queens on October 14th, and our annual gala, the Landmarks Lion Award honoring architect Morse Adjemi on November 14th. Information about all of our upcoming programming can be found on our website, hdc.org. If you have any questions about programming, you can contact me at marbulu@hdc.org. Today's class will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel for free viewing. You may also watch all of our previous Preservation School classes, virtual tours, and conference panels on our YouTube channel. I would like to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, City Council, and New York State Council on the Arts for supporting Preservation School. If you would like to receive AIA credit, please send me your AIA number. If you have any questions, you can add them to the chat and they will be addressed at the end. Now I'll hand it over to EverGreene's Matt Martin and Nick Hopkins. Thank you.
Nick?
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Hopkins, and I'm a senior superintendent for EverGreene Architectural Arts. I have been working on job sites in the construction industry for the past 15 years and have focused on historic preservation for 10 of those years. As a young man in high school, I gutted homes in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina and then returned to New Orleans over a decade later to earn a master's in science in historic preservation from Tulane University. There are two reasons why I'm so honored to be able to speak to you all today about the work we did at the Farley Post Office. The first reason is because it wasn't too long ago that I was a student myself, listening to other people's stories and experiences in their efforts to preserve historic architecture. So now I feel it is my duty to inspire the next generation of preservationists and conservators to join us with their new perspectives and ideas. Secondly, my career with EverGreene began 5 years ago when I was asked to lead the restoration of the Farley Post Office. This project catapulted me into what I couldn't deny was a giant step in my professional journey, and I owe EverGreene not only for trusting me then with representing the company's mission, but also now for allowing me to reflect on and represent all the tradespeople's hard work I witnessed during the restoration of the Farley Post Office lobby. The Farley Post Office lobby is a space my parents used and brought me to as a young boy growing up in the New York City metro area. So to be able to contribute to saving such a beautiful space is easily one of the highlights of my professional career. Finally, it's such a privilege to be here with my colleague, Matthew Martin, who is a true EverGreene veteran and someone who I believe is responsible for setting this project up to be the success story it is.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone in attendance, and thank you, Michelle, for hosting us. As Nick said, I'm Matthew Martin. I'm currently the Executive Vice President and Director of Preconstruction at EverGreene. I've been with the company since 2008, and I bring over 25 years of experience in pre-construction with a focus on project planning, cost estimating, and strategy for complex restoration projects like this one. Most of the projects that I focus on are large government construction projects. My academic background includes a BA in geography from CSUSB in Southern California and a Master's of Science in Construction Management from Drexel. My education, coupled with years of hands-on experience, shaped my approach to preservation projects. While preservation science is at the heart of what we do, it's critical to remember that preservation work almost always happens within the larger framework of a construction project. My specialty is integrating the preservation scope into the overall construction plan, making sure historic finishes and conservation treatments are aligned with the schedules, budgets, and workflows of general construction projects. So today, Nick and I share the Farley story. You'll hear two different perspectives, mine from pre-construction and Nick's from field operations. Together, these different perspectives show how preservation fits seamlessly into the life of a major construction project. And I do want to apologize in advance. Usually when I do these presentations with two people, I like to kind of flip back and forth. So you're hearing both of us. However, based on the nature of our work, me focus mainly on the pre-construction work and Nick on delivery. And that's the flow of this presentation. You're going to hear quite a bit from me on the front end, and then quite a bit from Nick on the back end. So, right. So just to give you some context, here's a little information about EverGreene Architectural Arts. We were founded back in 1978 by Jeff Green, who was actually a muralist and a fine artist. What's interesting about that timing is that it coincides with a wave of excitement around the historic preservation movement. Communities were realizing they were losing their architectural heritage too quickly, and people were beginning to rally around saving these landmarks. So Jeff wasn't just opening a studio, he was catching a cultural shift at the perfect moment. What started as a small mural studio grew into the largest specialty contractor in the United States focused on architectural restoration preservation. That's a huge leap when you think about it, from painting walls in a small studio to fully preserving the finishes on the walls, ceilings, domes, exteriors, some of the most iconic buildings in the country. Over the past 4 decades, we've completed more than 1,000 projects. And when I say projects, it's not just one type of building. We've touched courthouses, theaters, train stations, sacred spaces, higher education, 41 different state capitals. If you've traveled across the United States, chances are high that you've walked through space that we've been a part of bringing back to life. Along the way, we've collected nearly 300 industry awards, which is nice validation, but what's more meaningful are the reactions of the people who use the space. There's nothing greater than watching someone step into a restored train hall for the first time, looking up at the ceiling and just mouthing the word, wow. It happens all the time. We see it every single day, and it's never lost on us. Or it's amazing to be standing outside of a theater and hearing somebody just walk down the sidewalk, thanking us for restoring the space or being part of the restoration of the space, telling us their grandparents had their first date at that theater. That kind of connection, the way these buildings carry people's stories forward, is the true reward and the reason that we're all in this field. What makes this possible is our team. Today's EverGreene isn't just made up of artists, it's conservators, designers, craftspeople, sculptors, and specialists of every kind. We have office in New York, Chicago, DC, and Los Angeles, but the spirit of the company is the same as it was when Jeff started it. Artistry at the center, supported by collaboration. One thing that we're especially proud of at EverGreene is that we are 100% owned. That means every single employee, from a new apprentice to a senior conservator, has a real stake in the success of the company. It changes how people show up. There's a sense of accountability and also a sense of pride. You don't just do the work, you feel like you're building the legacy of the company. For students entering the field, I think it's worth paying attention to this. Preservation is not only about protecting buildings, it's about protecting the organizations and communities that do the work. When you empower people at every level, you create sustainability, not just for the craft, but for the culture that surrounds it. That's something you'll see echoed in the way we approach this Farley project. And it's something I hope you'll carry with you throughout your careers. So now a little bit about the building. The Farley Building is a New York landmark. It was designated in 1912 by the legendary firm McKim, Mead, and White as the companion to Penn Station. The old Penn Station, not the current one. It takes up 2 full city blocks. Its grand facade, lined with 53 Corinthian columns, is one of the most recognizable examples of Beaux-Arts civic architecture in the United States. Just standing in front of it, you feel the sense of permanence and dignity that the style is meant to convey. It was designated a New York City landmark in 1966 and added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1973. Originally, it was the city's primary postal hub, and for decades, it was the beating heart of communications in New York. Millions of letters, packages, even wartime telegrams passed through here. For generations, New York lined up at its windows, like Nick mentioned he did as a small child, to send and receive everything from love letters to business deals to news from overseas. What's fascinating is that the building wasn't just a post office, it was built with the same ambition as Penn Station. The 2 buildings were designed as a pair, symbolizing both movement and connection. Penn Station moved people, Farley moved ideas. And while Penn Station originally while Penn Station's original building was tragically demolished in the 60s, the Farley Building survived, which makes its preservation even more meaningful. Now, of course, it has been reborn as part of Moynihan Train Hall, a modern transportation, retail, and commercial hub. Our role in that rebirth was to restore the historic lobby, bringing back its sense of grandeur, while also making it function in this new adaptive reuse context. It really was an honor to be part of setting this project up for future generations. All right, now the specific project. This was a large-scale, multidisciplinary restoration effort in partnership with Skanska, one of the world's largest construction managers, with BCA as preservation consultant and Skidmore, Owings and Merrill as the architect of record. EverGreene coordinated all the specialty trades in the lobby: plaster, decorative finishes, stone, metal, wood, terrazzo, glazing, the historic lighting, including installation of and replication of custom glass to match the historic, which we'll get into soon. Every detail had to feel authentic, even though much of the work was happening in the middle of an active construction and transportation hub. We also oversaw more than $1 million worth of scaffolding designed to give our team safe access to these soaring surfaces while still protecting the thousands of people moving through the open and active post office each day. And it was open 24 hours a day. Safety for the public and our employees was a top priority for the project. So preservation isn't just about artistry, it's problem solving at scale. We're balancing history, design, engineering, and human safety all at once to make this a successful project. With a building that's more than a century old, there were bound to be some surprises. Many conditions were hidden behind layers of finishes, and the only way to uncover them was through exploratory probes, carefully opening things up to see what was really there. Sometimes we found water damage, sometimes area where earlier repairs have been done in ways that weren't historically accurate or done well at all. And occasionally we uncovered original details that have been concealed for decades. Each of those discoveries gave us a clearer picture of the building's story, but they also meant the scope of the work had to keep evolving. That uncertainty made pricing and estimating especially challenging. Our job was to manage a constantly shifting scope while still keeping subcontractor and our pricing realistic. To do that, we built flexibility into the budget, using allowances for a portion of the work and structuring contracts in a way that anticipated the unknowns. That planning meant that we uncovered something, or when we uncovered something unexpected in the field, it didn't derail the project's schedule or the budget. The point I'm trying to make is financial management is every bit as important as the craftsmanship. The most beautiful technical solutions don't matter if the project grinds to a halt because the numbers don't work. Preservation succeeds when artistry is supported by practical project controls. The talent of our craftspeople is what brings the work to life, but careful planning is what makes it possible at this scale. And then our strategic approach. Our strategy for the Farley project rested on 4 main elements. First, MBE and WBE participation. MBE stands for Minority Business Enterprise, and WBE stands for Women Business Enterprise. These programs were created to make sure that companies owned and operated by minorities and women have real opportunities and to participate in large public projects. This was a very important point for the owners and for the city, for the developers. And the point of this is to level the playing field in an industry that was traditionally difficult for these groups to get a foothold. Our company is not an MBE or a WBE. As I mentioned, we are an employee-owned company, which doesn't qualify us for either of those programs. But for Farley, inclusion was a critical factor in how the project was awarded. So we made it a priority for our company. We partnered with lower tier subcontractors who were certified MBE and WBEs. And in doing so, we not only met the project's goals, but we actually exceeded them. Exclusivity is not just a box to check on projects like this. It's often a decisive factor in how contracts are structured and awarded. And beyond the paperwork, it builds a stronger, more diverse workforce and creates more opportunities that historically didn't exist. Second, we used phased schedule. The way we accessed the space was extremely important to the U.S. Postal Service in particular, because the lobby was to remain open and active 24 hours a day, never closing. Nick's going to get into this a little bit more in a few minutes, but that was certainly one of the biggest challenges to plan around. Third, we had to plan, well, this I guess goes hand in hand with that. We had to plan around postal operations. Thousands of people came through this building every single day, 24 hours a day. And as mentioned previously, we had to keep the access clear, and safety for the public was a priority. And fourth, we had to pay very close attention to how we structured the contract. As mentioned, we had to make sure that everything was within the budget, and allowances were structured in a way that they could cover the cost for all the unknowns, because it was very clear that there would be no additional money above what was budgeted for this project. So taking these four strategies: inclusion, phasing, operational planning, smart contracting, this really gave us the ability to adapt as conditions have evolved, all while maintaining the client's trust and keeping the project on solid footing, and really positioned EverGreene in the best possible place for this type of project. So Nick.
Yep. So as far as the work zones go, to give you a little bit, maybe a better picture of how large the Farley Post Office lobby is, it's directly across from Madison Square Garden. It's a 2-block long lobby that spans from 33rd to 31st Street along 8th Avenue. And during our work, which I know has sort of changed since 2022, the lobby was actually a 24-hour public lobby. That means 5 of the entrances along 8th Avenue were always active and open for the public to enter and deposit letters or pick up other stuff for their purposes. We had one internal entrance along 33rd Street connecting the lobby to Moynihan Train Station. There were 4 entrances that were accessible to the USPS employees only. And then there were 2 elevators that opened up into each rotunda and actually accessed all 5 floors of the Farley Post Office building as a whole. Logistically, this becomes an immediate challenge for the field team, who is tasked with completing a full restoration in a public lobby that never closed for even a minute throughout the entire restoration. Therefore, we had to work closely with the general contractor, which Matt mentioned was Skanska, USPS lobby staff, fellow contractors also tasked with working in this space, like electricians, kind of any MEP crews that would kind of modernize the lobby, and then any subcontractors we had hired to perform restoration work in this space. The key to success was sequencing all the work from top to bottom with every trade involved in order to complete the work we needed to from the scaffolding, and then once the scaffolding were removed at ground level to complete the rest of our work. By establishing work zones, EverGreene was able to coordinate a schedule that considered the lobby's constant use, multiple entrances, and always planned for our work to go unnoticed so that the post office's work could continue normally. Our preservation teams established clear boundaries between our work areas and the space the public occupied, so that safety was our top priority while executing true historic restoration. That means the dust and noise we created was constantly monitored and mitigated, and the space we occupied was always synchronized with the post office's daily operation. If there ever was a problem with any of our efforts to complete a task, I would personally collaborate with the post office floor director, Ms. Lynn Watson, to design a work plan that satisfied all parties involved. This is an example. So you're basically going to see this is the lobby split in half. But on the right, you can see a legend, and it kind of breaks down the work zones that we worked in at different phases of the project. To manage a project of the scale in an active public building, we developed a detailed phasing and logistics plan. This diagram shows how the lobby was divided into discrete zones, allowing us to work systematically while keeping the post office operational. Phase 1 focused on the ancillary spaces, the both north and south wings, and these were areas we could complete early without major disruption to the public and anyone who used the post office. Phase 2 addressed the upper walls and ceilings in the east lobby and north and south rotundas. Then phase 3 and 4 concentrated on the lower walls of the rotundas and began the first sections of the east lobby. From there, phases 5, 6, and 7 moved us sequentially through the remaining lobby areas. And then sort of overlapping with kind of 6 and 7, phase 8 was us working on the exterior facade restoration. For you as students, the key lesson here is that phasing isn't just about dividing the work. It's about balancing restoration needs with public safety and building operations. In an occupied landmark like Farley, that balance is what allowed the project to succeed. By understanding our scope of work, identifying problems before they arose, and providing solutions to address those problems, we are able to successfully act as good stewards of restoration and be respectful guests in someone else's place of work. Now, scaffolding, because clearly this was a major part of our success story. The lobby ceiling height is around 40 feet, and the width of the lobby is about 30 feet from 31st Street to 33rd. For many, the first time walking inside the Farley Post Office lobby is breathtaking. It instantly invites the viewer to stare down its long corridor and gaze upwards at its ornately designed plaster ceiling. Right away, it became clear to our team that the thoughtful design of the scaffold system for the lobby was crucial to allowing our craftspeople to perform every phase of their work without restrictions. Some of the architectural features in the lobby literally ran from 31st Street to 33rd. And while traditional painting might allow a team to stop for the day and start up where they left off the next day, we knew as experts in decorative painting, this wasn't always an option for us. So when our decorative painters had to delicately glaze a ceiling cornice from one end of the lobby to the other, we would set up a team of painters and strategically work in sync with each other and combine their skills to glaze the entire cornice without stopping. In order to complete this specific task without any access issues, we hired a scaffold company, King Hoist, to provide full access to the ceiling in what the scaffold industry refers to as a dance floor. This allowed us to fully survey the ceiling, to identify and then restore the damaged or missing decorative plaster features. Once that was complete, we hired a team of painting specialists to wash every square inch of decorative plaster until it was suitable to be reprimed and base coated. Before any decorative painting took place, we performed paint pull tests in front of the team from BCA who reviewed our work. Once mock-ups were approved, we then fully refinished the decorative plaster ceiling using decorative paint techniques that mimicked the original colors and textures of the lobby when it was built. The scaffold design also provided access to the upper lobby wall elevations for us to perform restoration on. The lobby's walls are adorned with decorative plaster moldings and capitals, Botticino marble pilasters, and steel casement windows. Finally, the scaffold was carefully built around the lobby's 7 massive bronze chandeliers that were also part of EverGreene's scope to restore. Overall, any of the higher restoration work was actually quite simple to separate from the public because our work platform was completely sealed off from the public below, except for the instances of staircases or material hoist areas that we actually discreetly put in the rotunda so that it wasn't obvious to the public. So logistics. The real challenge was below that scaffold system, where EverGreene owned all of the marble, metal, plaster, and paint restoration scope that was accessible from ground level. This is where we utilized the work zone phase plan that our pre-construction team came up with. This allowed our work to be predictable and in many cases flexible to the needs of the USPS staff so that we could perform our work around their operations and customers. In order to execute true restoration without putting the public in harm's way, we created a curtain system that we hung from an aircraft cable grid we installed above the public in the lobby. This, in theory, resembled something along the lines of how a shower curtain contains water in a bathtub. Each curtain was 40 feet long by 20 feet tall and gave us the freedom to work in small sections of the lobby or connect different curtains together so that we could complete large swaths of work that did not interfere with the USPS operations. Any areas of work that we performed on in the lobby that would directly affect operations such as the teller windows or lobby entrances were all executed during the third shift when foot traffic is greatly reduced, which is usually between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. Again, this level of coordination requires us to communicate and plan with all parties involved so that we experience as few hiccups in our intended schedule. Moving materials through the building required strict coordination and security, as even one accident could have serious consequences to the project's ability to operate without interrupting the functionality of the lobby. Daily planning with the building operations was essential to balance restoration needs with public safety. Getting the scaffolding into the building itself ended up being an immense task to overcome because the amount of scaffolding necessary to provide full access to a lobby of this size was tremendously large. So our scaffold contractor literally built a sidewalk bridge that spanned over the public sidewalk along the 33rd Street and 8th Avenue entrance into one of the rotundas, the North Rotunda, and allowed their flatbed trucks to hand transfer the entire scaffold system parts into the lobby piece by piece. Over about 3 nights, the scaffold company built the main superstructure of the scaffold system that they then covered completely with a solid dance floor platform from end to end of the lobby. Some of the restoration highlights, which I think in this presentation you're seeing mostly are decorative painters, and the mock-up is on this bottom low, so you can see the drastic difference between our mock-up and the existing conditions that were in the field. Our work touched nearly every historic material and finish in the lobby. We repaired and conserved decorative plaster. We reprimed and painted all plaster surfaces with an emphasis on highlighting the decorative plaster elements with a brand new polychrome paint system. We cleaned, patched, and replaced Botticino marble on all wall elevations. We refurbished and replaced ornate steel portico elements and windows that line the lobby's north, south, and east elevations, as well as the exterior facade along 8th Avenue. We restored the historic bronze and brass lighting fixtures that included the replacement of glass globes, bowls, and decorative glass chandelier panes with etched images of Greek goddesses. And we replaced missing or broken pink Tennessee marble pavers on the lobby's floor, which we painstakingly matched to the original floor's pattern and color palettes in order to not draw any attention to the new replacement pieces. Once that was completed, our stone specialists fully rehoned and sealed the marble floor in order to highlight this unique floor system that you can see in other New York City historic spaces such as Grand Central, etc. Every detail was handled with care for authenticity and durability. The end result was a lobby that reflects McKim, Mead, and White's vision, ready to serve as part of the 21st century transportation hub. For someone who's tasked with orchestrating our field team, it is super important to me to take the wonderful job done by our pre-construction team to plan and organize a project of this size and then execute a restoration that I believe can be appreciated for another 100 years. The facade and glazing work. Beyond the lobby, our team also managed facade and glazing work. This is the scaffold system that basically gave us access to all the areas we had not completed in phase 1. We restored the lobby steel porticos, windows, and glazing systems, matching historic materials wherever possible. We power washed and cleaned the entire granite facade surfaces along 8th Avenue to remove any soiling or graffiti from years of neglect. The key was to preserve the original fabric while ensuring durability and performance for the future. This delicate balance between performing true architectural and material preservation while integrating all of the new amenities of modern construction of public spaces is something EverGreene specializes in. So collaborating with specialists. One of the biggest strengths of this project was the people, and no one knows this better than me. We worked with highly skilled craftspeople, plasterers, painters, stone conservators, metal specialists, all coordinated under EverGreene's leadership. Their knowledge and dedication ensured that every detail met both preservation standards and the client's expectations. A good example of this is when some of our senior conservators performed investigative paint analysis in the lobby that provided a window into the past where we could demonstrate to the historic restoration consultant and the developer the evidence they needed to see to understand what the original paint colors were in the lobby. To me, this is such a wonderful way to honor the design choices from the original construction of the building. It allows the lobby in many ways to guide us to the answers we are looking for. So in my opinion, it's the ultimate sign of respect to the craftspeople and designers that came before us. With the information we gathered from the paint analysis, it allowed us to collaborate closely with designers and artists, running field mock-ups for approval and quality control. By doing this, it gave preservation architects and the client confidence in our methods before full-scale implementation. The collaboration set the tone for trust and alignment throughout the project. Execution on the scale required tight project management. Our team coordinated daily schedules, managed subcontractors, and ensured safety remained the top priority in an active public space. The phased approach we used reduced disruptions and significantly keeping the building operational at all times. When scheduling conflicts or modern adaptations to the lobby created changes in our intended plans, our field and office project managers pivoted and adjusted to keep with an ever-evolving process. This is not a project we'd have done alone, obviously. We engaged specialty subcontractors for scaffolding, stone, and wood restoration. Close coordination among all parties was essential. Our role to bring these experts together and align their work under a unified preservation plan. And as you can see, there's on this photo on the left, there's the ceiling prior and what we ended up doing on the ceiling to the right, and one of the areas of the rotundas that we completed. The results really speak for themselves. The phased approach minimized disruptions. The craftsmanship was of the highest standard, and through trust and coordination, we delivered a restored lobby that honors McKim, Mead, and White's original vision. This project has become a model for how large-scale historic preservation can be achieved in an active urban environment. Most importantly, I hope if you ever have the time to walk into the Farley Post Office lobby, you will be able to envision some of the key points this presentation has covered to inspire you all to do the same on your future restoration endeavors. Of course, with any historic building, there are always surprises, and we uncovered many of them. And as Matt mentioned, some of it is just shoddy work. It's tough for the USPS staff to kind of maintain a building of this style when we are kind of specialists who do this on an everyday. So some of it was uncovering like the old paint systems that helped us guide us on what our answers would be. Other things were sort of reversing some of the mistakes that were done in the past to kind of mothball or button up problems that they were trying to address in the future. And we uncovered hidden materials and finishes that hadn't been seen in decades, as well as areas of deterioration that expanded the scope mid-project. Flexibility was key. Our team adapted quickly, incorporating these discoveries into the restoration plan without compromising schedule or quality.
Farley project reinforced some important lessons that apply across preservation. Communication and collaboration are the lifeblood of successful projects. Without them, even the best technical plans fail. Flexibility and creativity are just as important as technical skill because historic buildings will always hold surprises. And above all, details matter. The beauty and cultural value of a historic space are unlocked in the careful execution of those details. We're fortunate to work with clients who share this commitment, who understand that investing in historic details isn't just about the finishes, but about honoring cultural value and connecting communities to their history. But here's the reality that I want to leave you with. All of this has to fit within the framework of a much larger construction program. At Farley, our preservation scope was a very small part of a $1.6 billion redevelopment. The challenge and the opportunity is to ensure that preservation is integrated seamlessly into that bigger picture. As future professionals, success means mastering your craft, but also learning how to advocate for preservation within the broader demands of budgets, schedules, safety programs, and logistical challenges of large-scale construction projects.
Anyway, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. This is a pretty important opportunity for us to share the story of the Farley Post Office restoration. So thanks for listening.
And Michelle, thank you for having us again. Thank you everybody for for watching the presentation. We're proud of what was accomplished here at Farley, and we're grateful to our partners and craftspeople who made it all possible. With that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank
I
you.
have a question.
Great. Oh, go ahead, George.
Thank you. And thanks to EverGreene for your work on this and all over the country, some of which I've been able to appreciate. I have a few questions. I mean, I'm just so thrilled that the post office was kept. When I first heard that it was going to become Moynihan Station, I said, oh no, New York deserves a 24-hour post office that I've used over many years. So that was the first thing I was grateful for. And then the restoration, I couldn't believe it. But now I know Skanska was your client. Was their client the U.S. Postal Service? Or was it some other entity?
Vornado.
Vornado, yeah.
It was Vornado. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I thought that maybe it was a government entity. That's why the MWBE requirement was there. But perhaps Vornado saw the value and tax benefits of MWBE, which I assume are still in place, because this was probably all envisioned and mapped out, right, Matthew, many years ago, what, 10 years ago, perhaps, that it was inked?
Yeah, I mean, it might have even been longer than 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But Vornado was the end client, I guess, the developer, but U.S. Postal Service and the government was providing the federal government was providing funds for the project as well. So all stakeholders were in alignment on the MBE and WBE requirements for this project.
That's great. I'm glad. And another question, I was also grateful that the passageway was maintained on 33rd Street to keep vitality. When the first time I went to Moynihan, I said, oh gosh, there's a big sign that says post office that provided access. So that was wonderful. But did you guys know, you must have noted that sign, that vestige that said museum in that passageway? I think it's still there. Nicholas, do you know
Yeah,
anything
they
about
they they
that?
actually they removed everything from the museum during the restoration.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
now it's mailboxes.
Good question. Did
I
they
think
not?
it is.
Oh, and then okay. I believe there was sort of like a mobile museum that was in one of the rotundas
Uh-huh.
where you could see one of like the horse-drawn carriage that brought mail, and then there was a little inlet in the south lobby
Oh,
near 31st Street where you can get your passport photos.
mhm.
I believe that's where they relocated some of it. But certainly during the restoration, all of that was stored in a safe place because the scaffold alone was taking up, majority of the
So it was
lobby.
a postal museum?
I believe there's still a postal museum there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to propose it as a museum of New York City preservation, since it's so intrinsically tied to Penn Station and other things. Okay, thank you very much. It's
Yep.
amazing.
Thank you, George.
Congratulations.
Really appreciate your question.
Thanks, George.
If anyone else has any other questions, you can unmute or put it in the chat. So to George's point of this starting over a decade ago, do you guys have like how long in full was the process?
Well, oh, I wish I had all the dates lined out. I should have put together a timeline. Um, but we were involved with Skanska, actually Vornado early on in some pilot projects on the windows of the exterior. We didn't ever plan on going after that work. That's not really our specialty, the windows, but we could work closely with them to come up with means and methods. And that had to have been, I mean, a good 12 years ago. And then once we finished that pilot project, then we actually went after the historic corridors on the third and fourth floors. A little bit of work on the corridor on the fifth floor, the Postmaster General Suite. This is all up above the lobby, and historic stairwells that you would never see from the post office. But that was, in terms of square footage, probably 5 times the size of this project. And so we worked on that for probably 2 years before this package here was released for bidding. And we worked very closely with Skanska to develop and BCA to develop the scope for this project, and then worked closely with Vornado to sign off on the plan and commit to a contract and move forward. So I would say probably, I mean, we probably started the process at least 12 years ago at this point.
It's quite the endeavor.
Yeah.
Another question. Were there any technical restoration issues that were unexpected and unique and that presented challenges to your team?
Nick, do you want to take this one?
Boy, yeah. Replacing the curved chandelier glass was pretty tough. That is a very rare thing to happen nowadays. And that curved panel also had that Greek goddess design that I mentioned. So we were pretty limited in finding a vendor that could produce that for us. And then we actually, and I personally installed them into the chandeliers. So there was some clear tweaking that the USPS staff had made on those bronze chandeliers, and the panels, all come the same size. So as we started to install them, we realized the postal kind of maintenance crew had been messing with the chandeliers to address whatever they were addressing, changing light bulbs or updating the electrical. But the first panel I tried to put in that did not fit, I had to look at those bronze chandeliers a little closer, and that's what you're seeing in the middle of the photo. I think they're about 4 or 5 feet tall, and they're solid bronze. So bringing those back into position so that all the new glass panes could fit was probably one of the more intimidating things I did on the project. And unfortunately, because of the curvature and the radius of that glass, I had to do it by myself. It was too tough for 2 people to try to install that glass into the chandelier off. I think at that point we did it off a lift. But I thought I got away with all of the hard tasks at Farley once the scaffold came down. But I think the bronze chandeliers were probably the hardest challenge for us to sort of pinpoint what we had to do to adjust those bronze chandeliers back into their original shape, so the glass panes would fit.
Someone else asked, when did you move to Brooklyn? I recall an older office studio very close to Farley, but that was maybe a decade ago.
Yeah, we moved to Brooklyn, I believe, 9 years ago, and that was very shortly after we began the transition into an employee-owned company. We were growing. We needed more space. We needed a more structured layout for our studio and office space. We were right there on 31st between 10th and 11th, if I remember correctly. And it would have been so great to have that office during this project, but yeah, we moved to Brooklyn, to Industry City. That original space, we were there for, I mean, probably long before I was with the company, but probably 15 or so years. And it kind of just grew organically, I guess, for lack of a better word. We needed a desk, we needed this, we needed that. And they just kept adding to it. Nothing was fully thought out. So it was kind of nice to start from scratch and actually plan the layout for an office and a studio to work efficiently and effectively and hosts guests and events and make for a more pleasant work environment.
I actually have a quick funny story that relates to that question. After all of the work was done and we're literally clearing out, one of the postal employees was like, "You guys remind me of this company that I used to see around the block." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, what's the name of the company?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know, but the guy who started is named Jeff Green." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that is us. We're EverGreene." He's like, "Oh, that's so cool." It's like, dude, 2 years, all of our signs and flags, and everyone has hard hats and vests with EverGreene. You never noticed that? He's like, "I had no idea." He's like, "I just knew Jeff Green. I didn't know the name of the company." I'm like, "Yes, this is EverGreene is the company Jeff Green founded." So yeah, I don't know why he never like asked me prior, but like the last piece of wood I brought out the lobby, he's like, "You know what? You should check this company out." I was like, "Yes, that is who we are actually." So
That's amazing.
yeah,
I
it was
have
pretty. It was a good laugh. Yeah.
I have one maybe slightly political question. Vornado, demolisher of the historic Hotel Pennsylvania, is not known for their preservationist bent or activities or anything like that. Did they have to, were they required to restore the post office?
Without getting political either, because Vornado is a good client for us on several projects. But yes, I recognize your where that question comes from. And the answer is yes. There, and that actually goes with Joseph's question next, whether SHPO LPC approvals required. And yes, BCA handled all of those. And being that this is a landmark space and on the National Historic Register, the oversight was they didn't have a choice. In short,
Thank you.
But they seemed to be really supportive of the process because I took them on a few tours, especially as the lobby was being restored, and they understood the significance of why it was worth saving. So just to give them a positive sort of you know review of how they worked with us on the lobby in particular. I actually thought they were very helpful and understanding of what we thought was the right direction to go when we restored the lobby.
and they were just as excited as anybody else that walked in. Like when that scaffold came down and it revealed that ceiling, they were just as impressed and amazed and proud as anybody else.
Yeah.
I don't see how they could not be. This is a stunningly gorgeous restoration. You guys did an amazing job.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
So do you want to speak any more to SHPO or LPC, or just yes, you needed permits from them?
I can't really comment too much on that for this project because it was handled by BCA. BCA was the preservation consultant on this project, so they were the company that interfaced with SHPO for this whole thing. So we relayed our information onto BCA, and then they packaged it for SHPO.
Mm-hmm. And am I incorrect to think the Department of Interior was involved too because it was a federal building?
A lot of it was Department of Interior standards for restoration, but I'm not sure how involved they were. They weren't
Gotcha.
involved on the pre-construction phase, with the exception of some language in the contracts. But
Yeah. And I know one of the photos Matt showed early on, a black and white photo, was something we did get from I believe the Department of Interior, and that was literally, unfortunately for us, how we were starting to see some of these colors on the ceiling, even though they are black and white. We can start to see these contrasts in the decorative painting, which kind of further helped us come to some of the conclusions on like in these diamonds or where you have the emblems of these different countries. Like pretty cool part of what I was told by the USPS staff is these government seals from these countries represent the governments who originally donated to the construction of the project. So you'll see like the emblem of France, Germany, exactly. So was a pretty awesome kind of history lesson too, because I had no idea until we started to look a little closer, and we're like, well, we see the American emblem. Like, what are these other countries doing up here? It makes no sense. But that's what the lobby manager had mentioned to me, is that those are the countries that contributed to the construction of the project.
That's very interesting. So seeing as the studio was far, did you guys do any work in the studio and then have to bring it over, or was everything done on site?
Let's see. That always depends about units and length. So the true answer to the question is, and I am someone who likes to have a field studio. Um, if I needed less than 50 linear feet of a crown molding or some other design, then it was appropriate to make molds on site and then to reproduce those castings on site. There were some other instances where we like some of the ceilings the heights got changed on 33rd, I think. And so we had to recreate some of those moldings. And if it was, over 50 linear feet, 100 linear feet, then depending on what it took to recreate those moldings, we would cast them off site. The thing you guys have to keep in mind is, every decorative plaster mold, for example, is a little science experiment. So if the site conditions aren't suitable for the proper curing times, then we will have issues with the products that we're producing on site. So I want to say the lobby was heated, at least heated, while we were doing the restoration. But obviously the extremes of winter and summer can produce some interesting scenarios when we are trying to cast plaster or to do our decorative painting. I don't believe any of the decorative painting was inhibited by the site conditions. And then maybe some of the paint analysis we actually sent back to our conservation studio and looked at it closer to kind of confirm our understanding of what we thought the original colors were. And then natural stuff like glass and other things that needs to be in a kiln, like we're not doing that on site.
Yeah, and the historic lighting as well that came out, except for the chandeliers. The large chandeliers stayed in place, right, Nick?
Yes, they definitely. Thank God they did.
Yeah, but all the other lighting came out was restored off-site and then reinstalled.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. But yeah, those chandeliers are gorgeous.
And heavy.
I don't even know how heavy they are, but yeah, they are. Once you're up close, you're like, okay, like I am tiny compared to this thing. So, but also like working with the scaffold company, like to make it clear to them, like how valuable the original glasswork in the chandelier was, and to make sure that they weren't just sort of rushing through the process of providing us access. Because obviously we want to get up on the scaffold as quick as possible, but to damage any of the original materials or services just kind of sets us back, not only on schedule, but the sort of promise that we're going to act as professionals in the lobby that was active.
That seems incredibly difficult. Do we have any other questions? Well, I don't see any. So thank you both very much. This was very fascinating. As I said, if anyone would like to receive credit, please do send me your AIA number and make sure I have your email as well. And yes, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.